The Oklahoma City bomber, Timothy McVeigh, was put to death by lethal injection in Terre Haute, Indiana today.
168 people died. 19 of them were children. The man who built the bomb was not a foreign operative. He was not a fugitive. He was a decorated U.S. Army veteran, Bronze Star recipient, Persian Gulf War veteran who drove a rental truck to a federal building in Oklahoma City, set a timer and walked away. His name was Timothy James McVeigh, age 26 at the time of the bombing, age 33 at the time of his death. On April 19, 1995, McVeigh detonated the largest domestic terrorist device ever assembled on U.S. soil. The federal government convicted him, sentenced him to death, and scheduled his execution. Then, 6 days before he was supposed to die, the FBI revealed it had withheld over 3,100 documents from his defense team. What happened in those final 6 days, and what those documents actually contained, is the part of this case most coverage does not reach. This file covers the bombing, the arrest, the trial, the documents, and the execution. The Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building at 200 Northwest 5th Street, Oklahoma City, was a 9-story structure housing 19 federal agencies. On the morning of April 19, 1995, it opened at normal capacity. The America's Kids Daycare Center on the second floor had children checked in before 9:00 a.m. 9:02 a.m. A Ryder rental truck parked at the drop-off zone directly in front of the building detonated. The device inside the truck consisted of approximately 4,800 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer mixed with nitromethane fuel oil, packed into 55-gallon plastic drums. The explosion removed the entire north face of the building, 9 floors, exposed to the street. It destroyed or damaged 324 structures within a 16-block radius. Glass shattered in buildings 55 miles away. 168 people were confirmed dead. 568 were injured. The rescue operation ran for 16 days before transitioning to recovery. Within hours of the explosion, investigators at the scene recovered a rear axle from the Ryder truck. The vehicle identification number on that axle was intact. FBI agents traced it to Elliott's Body Shop, a Ryder rental outlet in Junction City, Kansas. Employees there described the man who had rented the truck 3 days earlier. The FBI produced a composite sketch. They designated him John Doe No. One federal agent had not yet distributed that sketch publicly when McVeigh was already in custody. 91 minutes after the explosion at approximately 10:33 a.m., Oklahoma State Trooper Charles Hanger pulled over a yellow 1977 Mercury Marquis on Interstate 35, approximately 60 miles north of Oklahoma City. The reason for the stop: a missing rear license plate. During the stop, Trooper Hanger observed the profile of a firearm beneath McVeigh's jacket. McVeigh was carrying a loaded Glock 21.45 caliber in a shoulder holster. He had no permit. Hanger arrested him on a state firearms charge and transported him to the Noble County Jail in Perry, Oklahoma. McVeigh was booked. He was assigned a holding cell. He waited. 60 miles south, federal rescue teams were still pulling people from the rubble of the Murrah building. McVeigh sat in that cell for 2 days. He was scheduled to be released on bail on April 21, 1995. The bail hearing was set for that morning. He was 4 hours from walking out of the building. At approximately 9:00 a.m. on April 21, an FBI agent reviewing the composite sketch of John Doe No. 1 cross-referenced McVeigh's arrest booking photo. The match was flagged. Federal agents arrived at the Noble County Jail before the bail hearing concluded. McVeigh was transferred to federal custody. His clothing from the arrest had already been processed. Laboratory analysis confirmed the presence of PETN penterythritol tetranitrate, a primary explosive compound on the fabric. He had driven away from Oklahoma City with residue from the bomb still on him. The investigation then moved in 2 directions simultaneously. And what federal agents found in Kansas in the weeks that followed built a case that was almost entirely documented before it ever reached a courtroom. McVeigh and Terry Nichols, were indicted by a federal grand jury in August 1995. The charges against McVeigh included use of a weapon of mass destruction, destruction by explosives, and first-degree murder specifically, 8 counts covering the deaths of 8 federal law enforcement officers inside the Murrah building. Attorney General Janet Reno announced the government would seek the death penalty against both defendants. Judge Richard Match, U.S. District Court for the District of Colorado, granted a change of venue motion. The trial moved from Oklahoma City to Denver. United States v. McVeigh opened on April 24, 1997, exactly 2 years, 5 days after the bombing. The prosecution's physical evidence case was built on 4 pillars. First, the Ryder truck axle, traced to Junction City, Kansas, linked to a rental under the alias Robert Kling. Second, fertilizer purchase receipts, McVeigh's fingerprints on documents showing the purchase of 4,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate under a false identity from a co-op in McPherson, Kansas. Third, PETN residue confirmed on McVeigh's clothing at arrest. Fourth, a storage unit in Harrington, Kansas, rented under another alias, containing materials consistent with bomb construction. The prosecution had the physical file locked before the first witness was called. There was one piece of testimony, however, that the defense had no documented rebuttal for, and it came from inside McVeigh's own circle, Michael Fortier, former Army roommate, present during planning conversations. In December 1994, 4 months before the bombing, Fortier had driven with McVeigh to Oklahoma City. McVeigh walked him through the exterior of the Murrah building and explained the target selection. Fortier testified to all of it under oath, in detail on direct examination. Fortier's wife, Laurie, corroborated the account. Both testified under plea agreements. The defense challenged the credibility of cooperating witnesses. They argued evidence handling irregularities. They offered no witness to counter the physical evidence chain. On May 29, 1997, the prosecution rested. The defense rested on June 2, 1997, without calling a single witness. Here is where the timeline matters. The jury, 7 women, 5 men, began deliberations on June 2, 1997. They had the physical evidence, the testimony of 2 cooperating witnesses, and a complete documented paper trail spanning 18 months of operational planning. They deliberated for 23 hours and 24 minutes across 4 calendar days. On June 2, 1997, the foreperson delivered the verdict, guilty. On all 11 counts, McVeigh did not flinch. The courtroom did not react audibly. Judge Match maintained order throughout. The penalty phase proceeded the following week. Survivors testified. Family members of the 168 victims testified. McVeigh's legal team offered mitigating factors. On June 13, 1997, Judge Match sentenced Timothy McVeigh to death on each of the 11 capital counts. McVeigh was transported to the Special Confinement Unit at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana, to await execution. The case appeared closed. The conviction was unanimous. The sentence was death. The evidence was documented. Then the federal government's own records office made a disclosure that forced the U.S. Department of Justice to delay the execution. Following his June 13, 1997 sentencing, McVeigh pursued a direct appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit. The 10th Circuit affirmed the conviction and sentence without modification. McVeigh then petitioned the U.S. Supreme Court. On March 8, 1999, the Supreme Court denied certiorari declining to hear the case. At that point, McVeigh issued a documented instruction to his legal team: stop filing appeals. He stated publicly he accepted the facts as established at trial. He did not contest the physical evidence. He directed his attorneys to cease further appellate filings. His execution was scheduled for May 16, 2001, at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. He was 6 weeks from the execution date. On May 10, 2001, 6 days before McVeigh was to be executed, Attorney General John Ashcroft held a press conference in Washington, D.C. The FBI Ashcroft disclosed, had failed to produce approximately 3,100 documents to McVeigh's defense attorneys prior to trial. The documents had been sitting in FBI field offices across multiple states: Oklahoma City, Kansas City, Dallas, and others. They had not been disclosed as required under federal discovery rules. They had not been reviewed by defense counsel at any point during the trial. Ashcroft ordered a 30-day postponement of the execution. The new date was set for June 11, 2001. McVeigh's attorneys filed a motion for a new trial. The legal argument was a Brady violation, the prosecution's obligation under Brady v. Maryland, 373 U.S. 83, 1963, to disclose all evidence potentially material to the defense. 3,100 documents, withheld entirely, constituted a facially substantial Brady claim. Defense counsel reviewed all 3,100 documents during the 30-day window. On June 6, 2001, 5 days before the rescheduled execution, Judge Richard Match issued his ruling from the bench. Motion denied. Match found, after reviewing the materials, that none of the 3,100 withheld documents contained information that was both material and favorable to McVeigh's defense in a way that would have produced a different outcome at trial. The documents included investigative leads that had been followed and closed, witness interview summaries consistent with trial testimony, and administrative records. None altered the physical evidence chain. None impeached the core testimony. The 10th Circuit declined to grant a stay of execution. McVeigh declined to file further appeals. June 11, 2001 remained the date. Timothy McVeigh was executed at the Federal Correctional Complex in Terre Haute, Indiana. On June 11, 2001, his final meal request: 2 pints of mint chocolate chip ice cream. Nothing else. McVeigh submitted no verbal final statement to the warden. He submitted a written document, handwritten, single page. It was a complete transcription of the 1875 William Ernest Henley poem Invictus. McVeigh signed it. The final 2 lines of that document read, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Witnesses watched from behind glass as the federal government carried out its first execution in nearly 4 decades. At 7:14 a.m., Timothy McVeigh was pronounced dead by lethal injection. He was 33 years old. McVeigh became the first federal prisoner executed in the United States since Victor Feguer was hanged in Iowa on March 15, 1963, a gap of 38 years and 88 days. Terry Nichols was convicted of conspiracy and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter. He received life in federal prison. He remains incarcerated at ADX Florence, Colorado. Michael Fortier, who testified for the prosecution, served 10 years and 6 months of a 12-year federal sentence. He was released in January 2006. The site of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building is now the Oklahoma City National Memorial and Museum. The memorial contains 168 empty chairs arranged in 9 rows, 1 chair for each of the 168 dead, each row corresponding to a floor of the building. 19 of the chairs are smaller than the rest. Before you leave, McVeigh waived his remaining appeals. He told his attorneys to stop. He accepted the sentence. The question this case keeps raising is one the courts never had to answer. Does a defendant's right to waive appeals override the public's right to know whether the trial was clean? Comment below waiver should stand, or the state has an independent obligation. Subscribe to the execution docket for the next case file. The docket does not close. Case closed. This has been the execution docket.